think we are now recording, which is great. So today I'm going to be talking about how to prepare for your divorce. Divorce is such a difficult time. It's so challenging. It's something that you do really need to prepare for. If you can get some of these tips that I give you today in place, it will mean that the divorce could be smoother, it might be a bit easier, and you're definitely protecting yourself beforehand. So that's always a good thing. So really important to make sure that we are starting to put some of these things in place. I'm going to share my screen with you and get started really. So if you haven't been before, then today's session is, it's a weekly session that I put on every Wednesday at 9:30. And it's really to give you some tips and tricks to empower you, to give you information, to help you along your way during this time. So I do these sessions every week at 9:30, unless there is something going on. And obviously then sometimes they don't run, but usually they do. I've got a direct message. I'm separated since 2 months now, and I'm talking around the financial settlement. There are no kids involved, so it's a little simpler. We're trying to come to an agreement on our own so that we don't have to bear a lot of solicitor charges. And it's a good idea. The cost of solicitors can get to around £18,000. That's the average in the UK each. So you can see it can be really expensive. So definitely trying to resolve things yourself is a good starting point. So thank you for sharing that. The session runs for about 45 minutes. I talk for maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then I take questions from you. So if you haven't been before, that's how it works. If you have questions for me, put them in the chat box while I'm talking, and I can come to them at the end, because sometimes the questions will be around what I'm talking about, and sometimes the questions may be slightly different, and so I can definitely answer those as well. So before I start on, talking about you getting ready for divorce, like we really need to do this preparation. Let me introduce myself. You may not have come across me before. My name is Bhavna Radia, and I found myself going through what you may be looking at going through, or you're already going through, 13 years ago almost. I am, at the time, I had 3 children. My children were 1, 5, and 7. So they were quite young. And I was very lucky. I was practicing as a family lawyer, and so I had knowledge of what to do. But I found it really distressing. That time was so difficult. And it wasn't as if I hadn't been thinking about whether my marriage was working. It's not like I hadn't been trying to work out whether to continue in the marriage, whether divorce was the step to take. But when I came to that realization that actually I have to do this, it was really shocking for me. I found it very difficult. My mental health really plummeted. And I know that at the time I wasn't working because I had taken a career break just to bring up the children for a few years. And I was so worried about the finances, and some of you can relate to that. So I found myself going through this whole process, looking at the divorce application, which was slightly different then. We had to apportion blame or have separated for 2 years or 5 years. And for me, it was apportioning blame. So, I really had to start looking at the processes that I'd been doing for clients for many years, and actually applying these to myself. And it is very different when you are managing your own divorce as a divorce lawyer, because although you know what to do, no one tells you how this is actually going to feel. So it was a learning curve for me, for how clients feel. It was a learning curve on how to manage this myself. Um, Forward on a few years, and my divorce was done, but it got me thinking, as to how people that are going through this must feel. I did go back into practice as a lawyer, but it just never sat well with me because I understood what my clients were going through. And I felt that, being a lawyer wasn't the right way of helping people. Now I understood how it feels. And so I did go on to work a little bit differently. And I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end. I really just want to go through the material that I've got ready for you, because I think, really working through some of this will help you. So the first thing that I ask you to do is put some things in place. And this has come from my own personal experience, but also experience with helping so many clients through the process. And I qualified as a family lawyer, straight through, from A levels to uni to law school and straight into practice. So, I qualified quite early on, and it's many, many years of experience, and my personal experience as well. You may have been, agonizing over this decision for many years. And some of you make the decision when you're fully ready to take on the next step. And even the years of agonizing and the years that you've been married, it's likely that your boundaries have not been there. I was in that place. I realized my marriage was over, and I knew that for many years I had no boundaries. I had allowed almost, um, some of my own self-respect to have dropped, but also with my ex-husband, I'd allowed things to happen that maybe I should have put my foot down. I should have, really controlled the things that were happening. But I know that I hadn't done that for many years. And maybe that's why I found myself in that position. Um, and I know that lots of people that I talk to will say that, they're really worried about certain things. And the questions that I get asked is, what do I do next? I don't know where to start. I don't know how it all works. Do I need to instruct a solicitor straight away? And obviously, I'll come to these things. But the first thing that you need to look at is, how are you going to build your strength and your mental resilience through this? How are you going to protect yourself? And getting mentally ready is the first thing, because if you can do this bit, you can make sure that you have started the right way, and you have to continue this throughout your divorce journey. And boundaries is one of those things that you may need to put in place. It might be that, as I said, during your marriage, your husband or wife's behavior has pushed your limits, has pushed your boundaries. And now you find yourself in a position where you don't have any. Um, and you're going to constantly be at the mercy of others if you don't have boundaries. It's going to tire you out. You're going to feel resentful, upset a lot. You're going to feel exhausted quite a bit. Um, and often clients will come to me and I'll say, how is this working for you? And they will say that possibly the other person is having contact at the family home, even though they don't live there. And so you might find yourself in a position where you're separated, but the person is in and out of the family home constantly. They've got a key, so they let themselves in. They possibly will come in at different times than agreed. Maybe they come a bit earlier. Maybe they come a bit later. Maybe it's ad hoc for them. They're letting themselves in and out. They have contact with the children while you are there. And so it's hard for you to heal. Maybe they say things that upset you and you feel you can't say anything back because it'll be an argument, or you're trying to keep the peace. You don't want the children to hear certain things. Maybe they expect you to cook dinner for them while they're there. I've heard of clients saying that, their ex-partner comes in, has lunch, that you've made, will have a nap in your marital bed, and then play with the children for a bit, hang out there expecting to be fed and watered, and then will leave when they're ready. And these things will stop you from healing. They'll stop you from being able to grow as a person, will stop you from being able to have some privacy. And so, what would you do in this situation? And what I always say is you need to put some boundaries in place, and it will look different for everybody. Your boundaries will be different according to what's important to you and according to what you need. So if you find yourself feeling upset by something your ex-partner is doing, then how are you going to resolve that? Think about what you could put in place to change that. Boundaries are really important. You may have, during the marriage, been subject to controlling, coercive behavior. There may have been verbal abuse. There may have been emotional abuse, financial abuse, and even physical abuse. So we need to make sure that this doesn't continue. And if you haven't had boundaries for many years, it's really hard to suddenly go all in and put boundaries in place for everything. It may be that you choose one behavior and you let the other person know that you are not going to allow this anymore. So think about what those could be. Is there anything that's happening with your ex-partner at the moment that you want to, that upsets you, that stops you from moving forward, and that you would like to change? Think about what they could be. So, for examples, it could be the other person coming in and out of the family home. It might be boundaries around how your communication works with them. It may be boundaries around how they talk to you, the kind of words they use. Is it around, the names they call you or how aggressive they could get? Is it that you really just don't want text communication with them? Handover for your child could be something that you look at. So it may be hard for you because you've never put boundaries in place or you haven't had them for so long. So what boundary could you start with? What one thing could you change that would help you the most? So, for example, if it is something around the way the person speaks to you, what you could do is let them know that if they continue speaking to you in that way, could be on a telephone call, that you will need to put the phone down and you'll resume the conversation later on when they're calmer. They're not going to like this, but it might be that you give them a warning and then you actually put the phone down, and they are going to be shocked that you do this. But actually, you'll feel more in control, more empowered, and actually be able to heal going forward. So think about the boundaries that you need to change and how you could do this. And feel free to drop me a message if you're on Zoom. Drop me a message and let me know what boundaries you want to change, and maybe I could guide you on how you could do that. I've already talked a little bit about communication, but I'll talk about that a bit more. The way you can communicate is really important. How do you communicate right now with your ex-husband and wife? How does it make you feel? Does it trigger you? Does it upset you? And if you say yes to those things, that it does upset you, it stops you moving forward, think about how you could do things differently. You can choose how you respond to your ex's messages. Some people will instantly react. So when you get a text message, and I've done this many, many times, when you get a text message, you just react from a place of emotion instantly. And what you will say will then make the other person react. And you'll react back. And before you know it, you'll be having a text argument for a few hours. And it's horrible when it happens because it consumes you. It makes you feel awful. You get involved in those triggers again. And I know because I did this recently and I had to hold back and say, no more. You can't keep reacting. And it's really important to understand that it's okay to step back and not react to somebody's message, to your ex's message, in fact, to anybody's message, if they are triggering you. It might be that when you get a message that triggers you, you take a breath, you put it away, and you come back to it later that evening when you're not in the middle of work or something where you're busy, and you take a deep breath and you respond effectively. You might decide not to respond at all, but you don't respond from emotion. You respond from a calm place, answering something that you have to answer. Just don't get involved in the things you don't need to answer. You can also choose when you read messages. You might find that if text messages, WhatsApp messages trigger you, that you let that person know that you don't want to deal with things by WhatsApp. And you can say, can you drop me an email? I don't want to deal with this by WhatsApp. And if they refuse, you just don't respond until they email you. And with emails, you can have a filter rule. So you filter that person's emails into a particular folder. You don't get notifications, and maybe every couple of days you check for a message, or you put a notification on, but you don't get to see the message. And you decide that you will read that message later on when you're in a better state of mind. You're not at work, you're not busy, you're not triggered. And so that might help you keep that communication a bit calmer. You also want to think about when you're communicating, remember what your priorities are, because you will respond from a place of what is priority to you, and your ex will respond from a place of what is priority to them. And so you'll both be arguing over something, and you've just got to remember that that isn't his or her priority, what your view is. And so sometimes we have to adjust what we're saying, or we might need to compromise, or you might need to see the other person's point of view. So it's just thinking about what your priorities are. And one of your priorities, overall priorities for your divorce, might be a good co-parenting relationship. And if that is a priority, then it's really important you don't continue with name calling if your ex is doing that, verbal abuse, triggering each other up, writing things that you know is going to upset the other person, because you're not then communicating from a place of your priorities. It's better to calm things down. You don't have to always give in, but just calm things down and come back to these conversations later on. Priorities are very important. And that's one thing I did want to talk about, because if you know what is important to you, if you know what your goals are and your priorities are, you should always deal with things from that place. So for some people, as I said, their priority is a good co-parenting relationship, and that might be yours. Making sure the impact of the divorce is lessened on the children. It might be staying in the family home. It might be moving to a place that is closer to the children's school, or maybe moving to a place where you've got a bigger support network. Maybe your priority is having a 50-50 arrangement with the other person so that you're both able to have good quality time with the children, but also time to work and also do other things that are important to you. It might be the children living with you is your priority. You should write down what your priorities are when you start, because when you know what your priorities are, then the decisions you make later on, the way you communicate, the way you deal with your divorce will be different. If staying in the family home, for example, is your priority, then we need to do a certain amount of work on understanding how that could work. We need to work out your finances to see if that is possible. But you also need to make sure that you get yourself ready for that. And there'll be certain things that you need to do to get yourself financially ready to stay in the family home. So we would need to work on that, and your whole divorce would be centered around that objective. And it may be that that's your priority to start with, and later on you adjust that priority. And it's okay for these things to change as you understand things better, as things progress. Often people start off with that priority, and then later on, as the emotions die down, and they can actually see themselves living somewhere else. And sometimes it's beneficial to move to a different location or a different property, or to downsize. And their priorities may change, but it's good to start off with what your priorities are, because then as your legal advisor, I can guide you on what that could be. And I was talking to a client who had that as a priority, and she was absolutely adamant that she would only get divorced if she could stay in the family home. And we talked about this a lot. And through our conversations, we kept coming back to, what if she couldn't stay in the family home? Would she still get divorced? And she said, yes, I still want to. I can't stay in this marriage. And so then we realized that actually staying in the family home wasn't her absolute priority. It was to get divorced in a peaceful way. Staying in the home was a preference, and we could definitely work on that. But when we looked at what staying in the family home meant, it may have meant her getting two jobs to financially afford it. And that would mean that her other priority of having the children live with her may not be met. So we had to look at what her absolute priorities were. And actually it came down to having a peaceful divorce, making sure the divorce didn't impact the children, keeping her stress levels down because of health conditions, but having a stable home, somewhere where she didn't want to rent, but that she lived in a property that she owned. And definitely we were able to achieve those. So it's really understanding what your top priorities are, and going deep on these. And now the last one here is self-care habits. Really important. Before you start, you need to think about what you can put in place to look after yourself. And a lot of people skip this. I talk about it a lot because when I started, I skipped it as well. I didn't really worry about self-care. There's too many other things to think about when you realize you're going through divorce and you've got young children. And I know this bit isn't legal, but actually, the work that I do with my clients isn't just legal. We talk about so many different things, decisions that you've got to make, your mental health, how you look after yourself, how to think about things, how to tell your children, for example. Divorce is not just a legal process, it encompasses so many things. And so for me, I talk about lots of different things, and maybe this is because I've been through it. It's a tough process. It can be long, it can be draining, it can really affect your mental state. So put some things in place. It doesn't have to be very long. Whatever routine you put in place, it doesn't have to be 2 hours. This is a big topic, so I am going to reduce it down because of time. But try and put a routine in place that can help you stay strong, help you manage your emotions. So the first thing that I did this morning as I woke up, I put my headphones in. I didn't do anything else. I put my headphones in and I have a meditation ready. It's 10 minutes in the morning. And I've got them saved already on my phone, but I chose a meditation depending on how I was feeling the day before or how the day is going to go for me today. So if I've got a really stressful day, I choose a guided meditation. And there's plenty of them on YouTube, on the internet, that would help me with focus. If I had a lot of anxiety coming up the night before, I might choose one to reduce anxiety. Maybe if I had some health conditions, something about healing. And sometimes it's just to calm your mind or to protect your energy. So whatever you've got coming up, choose one that might help you with anxiety, controlling your emotions, staying calm, whatever's coming up for you. This really helps me start my day the right way because I've cleared my mind. My energy is right before I start, and it is only 10 minutes and it doesn't cost me anything. When I was going through my divorce, this is how I started. I couldn't really meditate without a guide because my thoughts just went on to whatever I had to do, and I was worrying about this or waking up the children, whatever it was. But this 10 minutes of guided meditation made me go into that sort of more calm state. I journaled when I was going through my divorce. It took me a while to get into it because my journaling was, I don't know what to write initially. And I don't know if some of you have gone through something similar and also struggled to journal. But so initially I wrote down the 5 things I was grateful for that day. And again, I struggled with this. The sky is blue, the sun is out, I'm awake was like my basic ones. And then slowly I could feel the gratitude for the other things in my life. And it made me feel so positive. And I still carry this on because it really makes me feel like I've got so much to be grateful for. And that is the energy that I want to emit. We always have things to be grateful for, even going through a divorce. And you may not feel it straight away, but it's a practice. I also added in movement. And when I went through my divorce, I didn't have a lot of money because I wasn't working. And I had to always find things that were low cost, didn't take up too much time. And, I could mix that in with having children around me. So I did go to the park a lot with the children and I ran around a lot, danced in the kitchen while we were tidying up or I was clearing up, loud music, singing and dancing. Movement doesn't have to be hours in the gym. It doesn't have to be going for a run. It can be any movement that brings you joy. I did start running as the children went to school. I was out running, and that made me feel fantastic. But that might not be for you. Choose something that's great for you. It might be an exercise class because it brings a social element. And it could be a fun one like Zumba or something like that, where there's loud music and you're moving, you're exercising, and you're socializing as well. So find something that works for you. I would love to hear what you guys have been doing to help you through your divorce, or any techniques you've got that have helped you with your self-care. It's really good to share because that can help others as well. The other thing that I ask clients to do before we get started on the divorce application is to look at how you protect yourself. It's a really important thing. And lots of people skip this as well. And that's why I talk about preparing first. So the first thing that I would ask a client to do is, do you have any paperwork, any correspondence, any communication and documents that you really need to keep safe? And most of us do. And keeping it safe might be that obviously there's a privacy element here. You might not want to share all your correspondence communication with the other person. There may be paperwork that you don't want to lose or you don't want the other person to see. There may be documents that you need to keep safe, like your marriage certificate, your passports, your children's passports, and you need to keep them safe. And sometimes they disappear once you start divorce proceedings. So you might want to keep them in a locked cabinet or maybe move them out of the family home. Also think about your digital devices, such as your laptops, iPads. Sometimes these things go missing. I've had clients have this happen where their laptop would go missing. Or maybe they can be accessed by the other person because there's no password, or maybe they know the password. So think about how you can protect your digital devices, your phone, your iPad, your laptop, any PCs. Do you need to put a password on these? Do you need to change the PIN on your phone? Think about where you put your digital devices as well as your correspondence and paperwork. Could you take some things out of the house beforehand? Could you make sure they're in a locked cupboard? Think about whether your email address is secure. Lots of people forget to do this. You may have shared your password with your ex-husband or wife, so they have access to your emails. And maybe before it didn't matter, but maybe now, if you're about to go through a divorce process, maybe now you don't want them to access your private emails because you may be getting help with the legal aspect. You may be contacting estate agents to get valuations. Whatever it is, you need to make sure your email is secure. If you're not sure, set up a new email address that you don't share. Maybe the other person doesn't even need to know about this email address. And while we're talking about passwords, think about passwords that might need to be changed. Does your husband or wife have access to passwords? For example, your social media accounts. You may have shared the password previously, and you might not want them to access that now. People forget about their security cameras, their doorbells that have video footage, like the Ring doorbell. Anything else that needs a password. You might need to change your password. You may need to secure these things. What else do you need to protect that I haven't mentioned? Is there anything else that you can think of that's coming up that you need to protect? Certain things that I see, sentimental items that you might, if you lost, you might be upset. So I hear of people saying there was a statue that, or a ceramic that my grandmother gave me that I really want to make sure I've secured. And it might be that that goes missing. Or if you leave the family home, you might forget to take it. And later on, the other person says, I don't have it. Sometimes golf clubs go missing, all sorts of things, jewelry, even insurance certificates for jewelry go missing. So think about anything like that that you really would be upset if you lost. What could you do to safeguard it? Um, and obviously, the most important thing that I've not mentioned here is your personal safety. You need to protect your personal safety. If you feel unsafe, if you feel intimidated or scared, then you might need to take steps to secure your safety. If you're living in the same house and you feel like the other person is aggressive towards you, what can you do to protect yourself? So, in the event of an argument, if you're feeling like they're getting aggressive, you feel intimidated and scared, it's okay to call the police. Make sure you log everything with the police, even afterwards. If you didn't call them straight away, then could you log it with the police, that incident, so that there is a record of all these incidents that are happening? Could you log anything else that's happening with the police? Could you log it with a domestic abuse charity, for example, or your GP, so that we have a record of what's happening? You may need to get a non-molestation injunction if there is threats of violence, if there is intimidation, aggression, and violence against you. I will do a talk about domestic abuse, and I have done in the past. So feel free to check out these talks on YouTube. But also, I'll do one live as well. So if you've got any questions, you can always ask me. So the last slide I have here is, do I need a solicitor? Lots of people will ask me this. And so I feel that I need to answer this question. Do you need a solicitor to get divorced? And the answer is no, you don't. You can get divorced on your own. You can do everything yourself. You don't need a solicitor to do anything for you. People think that it has to be done by a solicitor, and so they will instantly instruct somebody to do the work for them. You hopefully will not be stepping foot into a court. Most of the divorce process is administrative, so you don't necessarily need someone to do this for you. You can do all of it yourself. The cost for a solicitor usually is about 420, between 400 to 450 pounds an hour, inclusive of VAT. That's the usual cost. And that will include when they pick up your file to review it. They may not do any work, but they're just checking where things are up to. Having telephone calls with you, writing emails, reading emails, making notes, having a meeting with you, anything like that will be charged at 400 to 450 pounds an hour. The costs really build up. So initially you'll have a 1 hour call or meeting with them. So that will be 450 pounds. They will have to send you out some client care letters afterwards. They may need to write to the other side as well. So that will probably cost about £1,000 just for the first day. And costs will very, very, very quickly rack up. Once that letter has been sent to the other side, they'll get a letter back. They will then let you know that there's a letter, you will have a call, they'll write back, and before you know it, you'll be looking at £5,000-6,000. And as I mentioned, the average cost of a solicitor in the UK per person is £18,000 each. And it doesn't take long to get to £18,000. If you end up in court proceedings, you still don't need a solicitor because you can be a litigant in person and manage the court proceedings yourself. And many, many people are doing this now because they cannot afford £18,000 each for somebody to do everything for you. And some people, their costs will be 10,000. For some people, it will be 50,000, 75,000 upwards. We don't know how much it's going to cost because there will be a whole element of how complex the case is, how you behave, how the other person behaves. If they're being really stubborn and not being sensible, it may just cost more and more. So lots of people are now doing it themselves. And hopefully that explains to you that you don't need a solicitor. You can certainly do the work yourself. You can buy in the help that you need when you need it if you don't want someone to do everything for you. You could use somebody like me that can help you on a fixed fee, and I'll share a little bit about how I work as well at the end. But a solicitor is not essential. This day and age, getting knowledge, which is what these sessions are about, be open to empowering yourself, taking the steps that I talk about, taking control of the process yourself, can really help you keep your costs right down. And you can actually get a better result sometimes. I was speaking to somebody yesterday who actually instructed a central London firm. They were paying £800 an hour and they ran out of money. And they said they weren't happy with the representation they were getting. And in fact, the solicitor kept changing their minds about what should happen. They are now managing the process themselves and they've got court proceedings, but actually they've been so much happier representing themselves. They know the other person has also run out of money. And so they're both representing themselves. And they're getting a better result because they're able to put forward things how they want them put forward. And they're also being able to talk at court and try and resolve things. So they're getting to agreements quicker. There isn't that aggressive solicitor in between causing hostility. And obviously solicitors are needed for some people. They're not essential for everybody. But if you are in a position where you cannot communicate with the other person at all, because there is an injunction in place, a non-molestation injunction, which means you cannot communicate with each other in any way, then you may need a solicitor to write letters for you. But it still doesn't mean that you should get your solicitor to do everything for you because it will get expensive. Let me know if you've got any questions around anything that I've talked about so far, whether it is how you get legal help reasonably priced, how you protect yourself, any boundaries coming up. Let me know your thoughts on that. And just to saying, before I move on, divorce is a journey of many steps, and there's going to be lots of twists and turns. There's also going to be obstacles in the way, that some that are expected and some that you don't expect. But the important thing when you start is know where you are going. As soon as you've got a plan, as soon as you know your priorities and how you see this progressing, you've got somewhere to go. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know where to start? But also don't feel overwhelmed. Once you've mapped out a journey, don't think about the whole journey, just take it one step at a time, because that way you will do each step well. So think about how you might do this. And a little case study with somebody that worked with me. She knew her priorities, and it was great because we worked on that together. We put some priorities in place. I fully understand where she was going, what her vision was, what was really important to her, and how we were going to get there. She was clear about her steps. So we did some work on what steps are you going to have to take. We had kind of an idea of, if things stayed amicable, what the steps would be. If her ex-husband made it difficult, what she would do as well. We prepared a divorce application together, and we did some work on research on her finances and their family finances, and that was a whole piece that we needed to work on. I gave her 3-4 options for financial settlement after having a call with her and knowing what the finances looked like, and we chose one. And the one that we chose was one of her priorities. And we did some more work around that, because although people think that this is an easy process, that, working out your proposals, it really isn't if you're going to do it properly. We need to make sure they are viable proposals, that they don't have bad consequences to you, that we can see how it could work for the children, and we've considered everything. Once we had one proposal that we were going ahead with, We made sure that was put to the other side, and the negotiations started. And I kept sense checking her negotiations because she was willing to give more than I was guiding her to, because the emotions take over. And sometimes you'll just say, just give it, just give it. I don't want to go through this. And it is painful, but you need someone to hold you back and take it a step at a time. She got to an agreement, luckily, very quickly. And we prepared a holding agreement called a separation agreement while we were waiting for the final agreement to be prepared and for her to get to the right stage. So there was a holding agreement in place. The family home was transferred into her sole name. She paid over a lump sum. We then prepared her final consent order, her financial order, which was prepared and ready to go before she finished working with me. And then she submitted that herself at the right time. And everything came through, and it was great that we were able to do this in a period of 6 months. So, how can you work with me? And I said that I'd talk a little bit about this at the end. So the program that my client Anita worked with me on was this fixed fee program. It is 6 months of support and guidance. It's a really lovely space, and I love working with my clients in this way, especially because it's a fixed fee, so you are not worried about how many questions you ask me, how much time I've spent with you, whether you've changed your mind on the financial proposals, whether we made 3 proposals, we went with one, it didn't quite work out, so actually proposal number 3 is the one you're going with. And so it was really working through each stage and being there without worrying about time recording each conversation, each bit of work, because then that's difficult for me and I hate doing it. But also, if you need the help, then you need the help, rather than me saying, I'm sorry, it's going to cost you £700 for me to do this and you running out of money. We need to make sure you are confident, clear, empowered, and able to take the steps. And even if you know the steps that you need to take, sometimes overwhelm will kick in, and you come and chat to me about this, and I will help you break that overwhelm and take the steps you need to take. So I help you with communication with your ex-partner. We look at emails together that you'll be sending. We look at, correspondence that's come back. We talk about how to respond to things. We're filling in forms, preparing documents like a separation agreement. We might be filling in the divorce application. So I'm guiding you on all of these things. And to be honest, we won't know what you need when you start, because some people have extra documents they need. Some people may need to fill in extra court forms, but we are there dealing with everything that comes up. We're talking about the children, arrangements for children, finances, so income and expenditure, maintenance, assets, how to split assets, what assets are left out of the pot, liabilities, pretty much everything you can think of around divorce, every question you have, inheritance, jewelry, absolutely everything, how to tell the children. It comes with a supportive community, so you never feel alone. Because it's important that you have other places also to ask questions, not just ask them of me, but to ask other people going through this, how did you deal with this situation? So you get feedback, especially on things that are non-legal. We have other experts coming in because as much as, I know the legal process, I have an idea of finances, an idea about wills, conveyancing, all sorts of things. And obviously I've been through it myself, so I have that personal experience. I'm not an expert on wills. I'm not an expert on conveyancing. So we have other experts that you can talk to around these other subjects, even though I can guide you generally on them as well. And it's an amazing, amazing place that I find myself helping my clients in. I get really good feedback. I'm really blessed that my clients say the nicest things. And these are people that were working with me in the program. It's there to help you feel empowered, in control, more confident, and not worrying about the cost racking up as well. So before we come to your questions, let me tell you that you can contact me. We can have a call, and the call is to work out where you're up to now. So where are you at today? Where are you going? What is your vision? Where do you need to get to? Everybody's vision is different and their priorities are different. And how can I help you get there? Or what do you need to get there? It may not be me, it may be somebody else, but how can we get you there? And it might be the program is the right thing for you. And obviously, I'll recommend it if I think it is. If it isn't, I'll also tell you, because the important thing is we get you to where you need to get to. So if that seems interesting to you and you want to know more about the program, you want to know if it's the right thing for you, then feel free to book a call with me. Now, Mark, can you put the details for us to capture information and obviously book your call in the chat box so that everyone can see that? So feel free to just provide me with some basic information and then we'll book your call and have a chat. And that information means that we can keep our chat obviously useful for you as well. I have a book, and the book is actually there to help you take action. It's called the Divorce Planner. It is there to help you plan out the things you need to do and help you take some action. And it comes with downloadable resources as well. So feel free to purchase that from Amazon. We have a link to that, so we can put that in the chat box as well. And these are the different ways that you can stay in contact. And actually, the YouTube channel has other videos and recordings as well that you could go to and check out. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can see the new tips and strategies and information that I'm sharing. And these replays are also there for you to check out as well. So feel free to do that and go onto the website for free guides too. Nelma, will you put those details in the chat box as well? That would be great. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and I can see that you guys are asking me questions. So I'm going to jump on and answer your questions. So let's have a look at what you are asking. Okay. I know that you said that you couldn't join last week's session. The recording is on our YouTube channel. Really good idea to subscribe so that you can get notified when I'm going, when we put our recordings there. So I've got a direct message regarding the financial settlement. If we go for 50-50 of the marital home, do we need to consider the costs involved in selling the house? Like my ex-husband said that we need to deduct the cost of the broker. The bank will deduct, which is 3 to 5% of selling costs. This loss will be shared between him and me. Is this the correct approach? So usually when we are looking at the valuation of the family home, we are looking at the value of the family home and minus the mortgage, which gives you the equity. And then after that, we look at cost of sale. And generally, we take a percentage of the valuation as the cost of sale, because an estate agent will charge you 1%, for example. And then there will be other costs of selling, solicitors' costs, removals, etc. So generally, we look at a 2% or 3% cost of sale. So for your equity that you would be sharing, you would always look at the valuation of the family home minus the mortgage, minus cost of sale. And that is what you've got left to share, whether you are selling the home or not. And that would be the same for every property that you have. So it is almost the correct approach, but 3 to 5% is very high. It would normally be 2 to 3% that you would use. Hope that answers your question. So, okay, another direct message. My solicitor and his solicitor have been very inflammatory, and I am seeing this a lot for the past few months, and we now have court orders for child and financial matters. His solicitor keep submitting court applications, and I think he would rather waste his money on legal fees rather than give it to me or his 1-year-old son. And it's such a shame when that happens, and everything I do is about trying to stop that. There are safeguarding concerns with him and the baby due to alcohol abuse and DV. He is also financially abusing me. Work are now making me redundant after returning to maternity leave. Will this affect my MPS. You might need to let me know what MPS is, because that could be a few different things. So you might need to just put it in the chat box. An ability to keep the house. If I get a job in the next few months, we both now have new solicitors. Do you think we can negotiate out of court and pull back from court hearings? You should always try and negotiate out of court. Having inflammatory solicitors will put your costs up, will add hostility where maybe there didn't need to be hostility. You might think by having an aggressive solicitor, you will do better. That won't necessarily be the case. So I would be really worried about seeing solicitors getting inflammatory. I've seen so much aggression from solicitors. For family matters, solicitors have a code of ethics that say that they should be more amicable, conciliatory, and less inflammatory. And so, your solicitor should behave that way. Also, the Solicitors Regulation Authority could get involved if solicitors are being so aggressive. But coming back to your question, yes, you can always negotiate for keeping things out of court. And the courts are encouraging this more and more. So there were some regulation changes recently that actually said that the court will force you to go to out of court dispute resolution to try and get things resolved. And I think, why do you wait till the court forces you? You should try and do that anyway. At any point, try and settle, try and go back to other methods of resolution if you can't sit down together. And actually being, forward about these things can really help you get things resolved. It will keep your costs down, keep his costs down, and maybe you'll come out of this with a better relationship. I know that there's been domestic abuse and alcohol abuse, and you have to put safeguarding in place. Obviously, the children are priority and their well-being is priority. So it's coming to agreements that safeguard the children, but understanding how you might have a different approach. Also, so another direct message, how do I know the value of the property today? How would I get that evaluated? What would be the costs involved? I always say that try and get a free valuation from an estate agent if you can. You don't really want to be spending money to start off with. So getting 3 estate agents to value a property is a good idea, and taking an average and then agreeing that with the other side is the best way. You shouldn't really be spending money on a valuation to start with. So I've got a message here. Was Anita's husband amicable? Have you had any clients whose husbands were hostile, just wanting to be difficult to punish the other person and drain her financially? Yeah, all the time. As much as I believe in the amicable approach, that isn't what happens with every client. In fact, a lot of clients, there are difficulties in some respects. So I had a client that I was talking to. She's in the program. Yesterday, I was chatting to her, and she's reached a financial agreement. And it was the agreement that we first put together for her as the best financial proposal. And that took into account not only best for her, best for the children, and actually fair on her husband as well. So we put this, we were researching the finances. We asked him for disclosure and he gave disclosure willingly. And she was like, this really isn't difficult. He's being so kind, so amicable. This process isn't as hard as I thought it would be. Until she pushed back on certain things, and then it became hostile. It became difficult. And she was shocked at the turning point. And so things will be amicable over certain bits. They will be hostile on certain bits, and it's how you bring it back. And we worked really hard to bring it back, and we had to use different things to get that hostility down and make it a situation where he was forced to come to the table again, to communicate better, to be more constructive. And we got to an agreement without any court hearings. And we were lucky that we were able to achieve that. But it does come from using different methods and understanding psychology of the other person. And what is it that they need you to do for them to get back to the table? So it's, I deal with pretty much most partners where hostility is there. And it takes a bit of work to bring that hostility down and get them to the table. So I always, with my clients, advocate that, trying to get them to agreement without court proceedings. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes court proceedings will be what we have to start. And if that is the case, don't delay, don't keep putting off the court proceedings. If it looks like that's where it's going, just take control and move forward with that, because the quicker you do, the quicker you can resolve things. But for some clients, actually, it's important they start court proceedings very quickly to protect assets, for example, or to protect the children, for example. So depending on your situation, I would guide you on the best time to start court proceedings if it was necessary. How much do you charge if you want to have a one-off session with you, once or twice, as and when? This is a direct message. And to be honest, I don't do so many one-off sessions like that anymore, just because I really like working with people closely. I get to know you, I get to know the other person, I get to know your priorities and your situation. And every time you speak to me, I'm able to guide you in a better way because I have good background information. So I don't really do one-to-ones. It's very rare for me to do them. I work mostly through my program. Another direct message, and I'll just take a couple more. I want to reach out to him as I want to talk about all this, but we haven't spoken since May, since his solicitor have told him not to talk to me. But due to the non-molestation application I've submitted and the domestic violence incident, I don't know if he'll even talk to me. I feel very upset by the whole thing and I'm struggling financially. And I'm really sorry that this is expensive for you. You're struggling financially and that it has come to this. The problem you have is with a non-molestation injunction, you are likely, if you haven't got the order yet, if you've just submitted the application, you'll be asking the court to make an order that the other person, and I don't know, I think you're submitting this against your husband. You are saying that your husband must not correspond with you, communicate with you, contact you, either himself or through a third person. So if you then go ahead and contact him, obviously that makes it difficult for him, because if he contacts you, he's in breach of an order. So your solicitor will say, don't contact him. Don't contact him directly or indirectly through a third person, like a family member, because then you might be forcing him to breach an order. And that's the difficulty with when you've got a non-molestation order. You can use a solicitor just for a few letters. And lots of my clients, if they have an injunction, then they just use a solicitor for letters, and they work with me for guidance on how the letters should be drafted, drafting documents, applications, working out proposals, and just getting, regular guidance. Because with me, you'll have lots of touch points where you're getting regular guidance. So that is a possibility, but it's really difficult for you where you have got domestic violence and you're submitting an application for a non-molestation injunction. Another question, if both of us were working and we have had our own pension, my husband was working a couple of years before me, then do we need to consider pension as well in the financial settlement? If both of us are working full-time, then won't we be good to leave the pensions out? I think the way this works is that if you are asking for information about pensions, and you should be asking for information about pensions and about every asset, that doesn't mean you want that asset. And I think that's the confusion. Lots of people think that if I ask the other person about their pensions, about their savings, about any investments, that I want those things. That isn't the case. We have to do this thing called discovery at the beginning. And solicitors will expect this, the court will expect it. And it can be done in many ways. But discovery means that you are asking the other person to be transparent about assets and liabilities in their name. Doesn't mean that you want them, but they have to be transparent so we know what they have and they know what you have. Once you have done that exercise, then you look at a financial settlement that is in the best needs of everybody. That includes you, your husband, and your children as well. And that means many things, the best interest, what is meeting your needs, what's in your best interests. And actually sharing a pension might be in your best interests. And that might be one of the proposals you put forward because your pension provision is so wildly different. It may be that you leave both pensions as they are because there is a cost element to sharing. Both of you are working, you might have similar sized pensions, or you're not bothered about pensions. And you might decide that you leave pensions where they are, and that might be the right decision because it's quite an affair to do a pension share. And it may not be necessary either. So, yes, it might be best to leave pensions where they are, but we need to do the discovery part first and look at your needs, look at what is in the best interest of the children, and come up with financial proposals to have a look at that. But when we are looking at financial proposals, we need to look at your short-term financial situation, medium-term and long-term. And so we have to consider all of this before we decide what is best for you. And so, yes, that might be the right answer, but it might not be depending on your circumstances. So I hope that helps. It's really difficult that I can't answer these questions completely, but it does take a lot of work, a lot of research before I can answer questions properly. But hopefully that gives you a general idea. So coming back to the question that I was asked before, where you mentioned MPS and that spousal maintenance that you're talking about. Work are making you redundant, and that's going to affect your ability to keep the house if you get a job in the next few months. So I guess that was part of your comment, and you might get spousal maintenance. Again, it really depends on your situation. You've got a very young baby, a 1-year-old son, so it might be that spousal maintenance is necessary. You're returning from maternity leave, you're being made redundant. Financially, you may be in a very difficult position for a period. So limited spousal maintenance may be right in your case. But again, it depends on the circumstances. But I would certainly look at that if I was helping you. I would look at spousal maintenance for you. Okay, final message. It's another direct message. I've sent you a call request. Thank you for filling the form in, and we will definitely be in touch. I haven't got a solicitor. I really need to get things moving, or else I might lose my house and lose out on things that can be resolved. And actually, it's really important that once you've made a decision to get moving quickly, because yes, you might be in a situation where you lose your family home. And that was something that nearly happened to me, where our family home nearly got repossessed. So I had to sell very quickly. Things can get hidden, things will get lost. Savings disappear, jewelry disappears, houses get sold, believe it or not. Things get transferred into somebody else's name. And so then we do try and piece it together, but it becomes so much harder to piece together later. So it's always a good idea to do the work initially, do as much research as you can, start moving things quickly once you've made that decision, because then we can capture all the right information before it gets changed, moved, taken out of the country, whatever it is that's happening. So yeah, really important to start taking action. And when I have a call with you, if you're coming onto the program, we do a deep dive and we create a plan. So we work out the best way of doing things. And that best way will be different for everybody. So I did a plan with somebody yesterday, a new client who's coming onto the program. And her plan was very different to anybody else's because there were certain things we needed to do to protect her first before she even told him. And sometimes the plan is that somebody's looking to make a safe exit to leave the family home, and they don't want to tell the other person they're doing this. So we do all the work to protect them and to get ready for this safe exit. And their plan is really different to somebody else's. your plan may consist of doing quite a bit of work beforehand before you even tell the other person. So definitely, if you filled in the call request form, we'll be in touch. We can have a chat. We can look at where you're going. And if you're coming onto the program, we will do a deep dive on what your plan is, so you know exactly where you are going. So I hope that helps. I'm going to stop there because I know that I've gone over time and I've talked quite a bit. I hope those questions were helpful. The answers were helpful for you. The talk was helpful for you as well. I always love to see your feedback. So do let me know in the chat box what your thoughts are about today's talk. Just even answering the questions, whether they were helpful for you. And any other questions you have for me, put them in the chat box. And although I can't answer them now, we can come back to you and give you some guidance if that's possible, or refer you to some resources we have already. My assistant Nelmar's on the call, and he will definitely touch base with you. So feel free to let me know your thoughts. I would love to get some feedback on today. We put a lot of effort in putting on these events, so it's always great to have some feedback from you. And you can put them as a direct message if you don't want to share openly as well. So feel free to put that in the chat box. And I'm going to stop there. And the phone is ringing, which is not great. I'm going to stop there and